Alrighty, looks like we are up and running finally. Good evening to everybody joining in. Want to apologize for those who are expecting a warning. I realized this just a bit ago, but when we scheduled this in advance this afternoon, Facebook for some reason didn't register on the schedule. So there was supposed to be a post that went out, but didn't. So apologize for that in advance, but we are up and rolling now. And we are again talking about the potential for a storm system for the Friday afternoon and evening time frames. So give me a thumbs up or somebody let me know if you can hear me. Make sure my audio is up and working. We'll get started. Good evening, Alan. All right. Thank you for letting me know, Tara, Dawn. Awesome. All right. So, for those of you who are new to this, not to say new, but for those of you who have not seen or caught our last couple live streams, we are watching a potential storm system coming in this Friday, 2 days away. And it's a pretty potent fall system. There's a lot of wind shear, and it's looking like we're going to have some instability to work with. So the combination of the two could make for some strong to severe storms. Now, looking last night, we were looking at around the 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. time frame for the entire state. Well, we have some more clarity now. That we have a few more models that have come out, and we're going to go over those. So first off, I want to start with where we started last night, which is the NAM model. So the NAM model, completely 24 hours later, hasn't changed much at all. Go ahead and flip over here to our surface instability, and you're going to see pretty much nothing has changed with this system here. We're going to go ahead and zoom this into the Friday afternoon and evening time frames. And you're going to see the entire state is encompassed in about 500 joules of CAPE, which is borderline sufficient. When you get around the 500, we kind of get a little bit concerned here in the fall time. Anything over 500 it becomes sufficient. I'd go ahead and say it's just sufficient. But anything below 500 is kind of questionable. So the amount of instability being thrown out here by the NAM model is right around the sufficient range, which is why it's catching our eye. Timing on this has not changed. If it has slowed down just slightly, but no significant changes. So we're going to keep that 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. time frame. Now, we go ahead and flip over here to the NAM 3 model. This actually has a couple key things to go over here. First off, we'll go ahead and look at the instability. It should be pretty similar to the NAM we just looked at. This is the different version of the NAM. The other one was NAM 12. This is NAM 3. There's a difference. I'm not getting into that though, but this is your instability product. And we go ahead and go through the day on Friday afternoon. This is 4 p.m. on Friday. We have right around 3 to 400 joules of CAPE, 500 in spots, and we move that into the evening time frame, 6 o'clock. We have 600, 700 along the pretty sharp cold front here. You're going to see this cold front, pretty easy to spot here. And then as we go to the evening time, it encompasses the entire state and then moves out of the state by about midnight. So that's when the temperatures are really going to start to drop. You're going to feel the moisture go away. So with that being said, we do have a few products on the NAM 3 to look at that the NAM 12 does not offer. And the first and major thing is going to be the radar. Now, we look at radar. This is what we call reflectivity. It's not set in stone. This is just the model's depiction on what it thinks could happen. So we're going to go ahead and zoom this forward through Thursday into Friday morning. We're going to see pretty much a dry day throughout the day. And then we have this line. We can see it very clearly here. That's going to be on the cold front there from the tip of the mitten down here all the way down through Missouri into Oklahoma. That is a very sharp cold front. This is 4 p.m. Friday. As we go through the afternoon, we start to see some of these storms down here in Southwest Michigan start to try to pop off here. So that moves eastward through the state. And as that line passes, and this is where fall is kind of different than the summertime. Now, in summertime, if we had more instability, there'd probably be explosive thunderstorms. But because these are fall, we're not going to have as much instability that we need to work with, these storms are going to be what we call low top storms. So, what that means is just the updrafts aren't reaching as high as they normally would in a typical summertime fashion. So, because that these storms have a lot of wind shear to work with and the strength of this cold front, that line that works through the state, no matter if you get thunder or not, there are some areas that may not receive thunder, although I think most areas may see thunder. But what I'm trying to say here is along that line will more than likely be gusty winds just because the system is quite strong and the cold frontal passage is going to be pretty sharp where it's going to be like a snap of the finger, boom. It's going to be pretty instantaneous. You're going to feel that temperature drop. It's going to probably get pretty windy behind that front. So regardless of storms, it's more than likely going to be windy, but any rain, any storms that do form on that cold front will have no problem bringing down the higher winds to the surface, which is why we are more concerned. That leads me into the threats for this. I would highly hedge my bet that the wind is going to be the dominant threat. I know yesterday we mentioned tornadoes as a potential threat. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm leaning against there being a tornado threat just because the wind shear, again, does not orient properly for rotating updrafts. So this should mainly be a damaging wind threat. Now, again, that could change, but I'm really starting to lean toward that non-tornadic side of things. One more thing we can look at is a different model called the RAP, Rapid Refresh. And I'm going to use what we call supercell composite. This is just a kind of mixture of instability and wind shear that kind of orients itself. Basically, it's a good measure to see if severe weather could be possible. And as we can see here, it doesn't take a lot of this in the fall time to get severe storms, but through the day on Friday, we see the entire state is encompassed in a pretty good environment here with wind shear and instability overlapping. So anywhere in Michigan, I'd still say is up in the air, kind of borderline, could see it. But I do think that squall line that forms, or at least a line of storms, will form on that cold front that could extend all the way through the state. But I'm going to go ahead and say I think the highest probability is going to be in the south and central parts of the state, particularly on the west side. So we're talking Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek. Those areas over there would have the highest threat according to the models, and I would think that aligns pretty well because typically with these systems, the further south you go, the better the moisture is, the better the temperature, just an overall better environment there is. Although the model here does indicate that that environment is pretty much the same across Michigan, it's just typical meteorology, so to speak, that the further south you go, the better the dynamics will be, which is it's typical in the fall. So with that being said, I don't yet have the HRRR model loaded out. We do have it up until 18Z, or should I say, yeah, it is 18Z, which is 2 p.m. on Friday, which I can go ahead and show you what that looks like. And then I look to the chat for some questions here. But trying to get this. Nope, I want the Midwest. Okay, there we go. So this is the HRRR model. Go ahead and bring this all the way forward to 48 hours. It does have that line of storms you start to see develop here across Lake Michigan into Illinois, Wisconsin. This is 2 p.m. I would expect that to continue to mature as it pushes in toward Michigan. And that's going to be the focus here. I would say right around that 3 p.m. time frame, expect storms to arrive in the western part of the state. And they'll move pretty quickly, about 50, 60 miles per hour, just because these fall systems tend to move pretty quickly. So I would say the overall threat for severe weather would be over by the mid-evening around 8 p.m. hour. So 3 to 8 p.m. I think is still on track. And I will say one more thing here. There is currently no SPC risk on day 3. Usually we'll post that on the page. They have not posted just because there is no risk. I have read through the forecast discussions from the NWS, from Grand Rapids and Detroit. And I will say Grand Rapids is starting to key in on this setup as well, quoting their discussion this afternoon, saying a few of the models, the possibility of instability. I know I said that pretty fast. The possibility of there being sufficient instability is growing among the model members. And that goes from a couple models, the FV3, the NAM3, the GFS, the GEFS ensembles, which is like a mixture of models. It says, while confidence in any organized convection is low, given the uncertainty and the extent of surface-based instability, given increasing deep shear to over 40 knots in Friday afternoon time frame, this will need to be closely monitored over the coming days. So, on top of what we've been talking about for a couple weeks here, the NWS is also keying in on this particular day and time frame as well. So, with that being said, I'll go ahead and look and flip over here to the chat, and I'll go ahead and leave this up here and see what people are saying here. Oh, got a lot of comments here. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start at the very top here. Good evening. Hello, everybody. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't expect there to be any tornado threat, if any at all. I would say it's very minimal at this point in time. Again, things can change. So, but right now I'm kind of leaning just against that, against tornadoes being a possibility. Yeah, Becca, I would say rain and wind, and I do think this does have potential to be a pretty um, decent wind maker, just because the amount of wind shear is there, and it's not going to take much to get those winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere down to the surface, just because um, they're going to be low top storms. There's going to be, if these models are hinting at anything, it's going to be sufficient instability to get those winds mixed down to the surface. So. All right, Ben says he will be targeting Southwest Michigan. He's one of our partner chasers. Give him a follow if you haven't already. There's his page, Great Lakes Weather. All right, let's go ahead and get through these. Yeah, I would say Wayne. I still say for specific areas, I still would put the entire Lower Peninsula in the area of interest. However, like I mentioned, I do think the highest threat is going to be in the southwest part of the state, particularly Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo areas, surrounding areas, from Lansing down to Jackson, maybe Coldwater, those areas in particular. But I still think, just given the environment that the models are predicting, the entire state does have that shot. But I think the coverage of storms will be probably greatest in Southwest Michigan. Possible bad rain. I don't think the rainfall slash flooding threat is going to be high in the southern part of the state. I know if any places up in the tip of the mitten in the southern part of the UP, I know they've had a lot of rain in the past couple of days. So I think any flooding risk would be up in the northern parts of the state. Muskegon threat at 7. You may be clear of storms by 7 o'clock. It's just going to get really, really windy along that cold front. Maybe some rain lingering, but overall, Muskegon should be out of that threat unless it slows down between now and Friday, which is possible. But excuse me, as of this time, and given the consistency between yesterday, today, and we'll go ahead and say the day before that. I'll go ahead and just say that the timing on this should be right around the 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. in the western part of the state. It should be clear Muskegon by 7. What's up, Caleb? Caleb is one of my friends from Indiana, and he's also very, very knowledgeable on meteorology here. So, and he's thinking the low top QLCS as well. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking as well. It might be a broken QLCS. Or it could be a pretty decent wind maker, I would assume, here with these thermals trending the way they are. No, Kenny, this is not going to be a derecho. This is not anywhere close to a derecho. What we saw back in August 24th, if you were local to that storm, that was a derecho, and this is going to be nothing of the sort. I would say winds up to 60 miles per hour. I'm not expecting anything crazy. I'm not saying 80-mile-an-hour winds. I'm not saying that at all. I do think we could have isolated to scattered gusts up to 60, just given the strength of that cold front. Good question, Joey. The way it's trending right now, I would say borderline marginal to slight. If these thermals end up like, if I keep saying thermodynamics or thermals, I'm talking about instability. If instability and moisture, go ahead and throw moisture in there. If either one of those ends up being higher than forecasted, I could probably see them introducing a slight risk. But given about 500 joules of surface-based CAPE, I would expect that to remain a marginal. Anything higher than that, I would look for it to go slight risk. from Grand Rapids to Wyoming around 6. Kristen, you should be good. I'm going to say should, given the timing of this. Like I said before, I think the timing of this is going to be a little bit earlier on the west side of the state there. You probably will have some wind and maybe some rain lingering around, but nothing severe. The storm potential will be off to your east at that point. I do believe there is a model on here that does give me, or a product on this model that does give me potential wind gust. Let's see if this shows anything here. Sometimes this is accurate. Sometimes it's not. No, it's not. I can try the NAM really quick here, but sometimes you'll get these, especially in the summertime with these particular storms. Sometimes you'll get a few storms showing up on this wind model thing. You can kind of see here up in Michigan, 35 knots. So that's close to about 40 miles per hour up there. But you can see the cold front here. It doesn't show much along that cold front. So I would expect there to be a little bit more than that, just given the rain and the environment ahead of that. So we'll get into that as we get closer. Go ahead and flip this back over here to go ahead and do surface base cape. There we go. All right, back to the comments. All right, Becca asked why this year has had, or why Michigan has become such a bad storm state this year. Okay, if you go back on our YouTube channel, we posted a video. It was kind of like a short 4 or 5 minute video. Could have did a better job with it, but if you were to watch that video, we kind of talked briefly about what we call the ENSO phasing. It leans El Nino to La Nina, and there's a neutral stage. Now, historically speaking, we were in a La Nina over the winter, trending into a neutral phase. Historically speaking, in that neutral phase from La Nina to neutral to El Nino, in that middle phase, we have a more active severe weather year. And that is exactly what happened this year. So we kind of predicted it this spring, but I think I would point to that as the main culprit as to why this year was more active. And it does have to do with a lot of the jet stream positioning and stuff like that. And that all goes in back to the phasing. But now we're switched over to an El Nino. So this upcoming year, historically speaking, would be below average for severe weather. I'm not going to say there's not going to be severe weather because that's going to be a lie. But just historically speaking, that's the way it's trending. Hope that answers your question for you. For those asking specific areas, again, I'm going to say all of Lower Peninsula be on alert, area of interest. But I think the main threat's going to be over in Southwest Michigan. I see people asking for Wayne, Monroe, North Manitowoc Island. I would just say be on alert. I think everybody does have a threat in the Lower Peninsula, but I would definitely say it's highest in the south and west. Timing 3 p.m. as far in the west, and then it should clear the state by around 8 p.m. So I'd say 3 to 8 p.m. Yes, hard freeze and snow showers are coming behind this cold front. It's a pretty sharp cold front. Aaron, I do not. I personally, I don't really follow the marine, the water forecast, so to speak. I know Nick here on our staff. I know he does. I can get with him if you message us if you need to know. I can get with you. Just go ahead and give the page a message, and I'll go ahead and forward that over to Nick, and he'd be the one to answer that question. Yes, Caleb. All depends on thermodynamics. There's enough bulk shear there, overlaps. There's enough dynamic forcing. Yeah, I see that, and I completely agree with you. It's just going to be the matter of if there's going to be instability there as well as moisture. I do think there's going to be moisture. It's just a matter of how much sunlight we can get to heat the surface and get it up and moving. Just because of sunlight, the sun angle this year is not as strong as it is in the summer and spring times. A long duration or quick moving? This is going to be quick moving. It should be, honestly, I could see this entering the state at 3 p.m., being out of the state by 6 or 7. It's going to be pretty moving 50, 60 miles per hour. In fact, I can probably tell you the storm speeds if I click on the sounding here. You guys are probably not going to see this, but if I click on a sounding, it'll tell me how fast the storm is going to move. A sounding is basically you click on the model and it'll pull up like an X-ray of the atmosphere. And in that will give me the storm speed. It's loading up. 50 miles per hour would be the going speed for these storms. Hillsdale, yes, you are in the area of interest. Just be on alert for the upcoming forecast. There is currently no threats from the SPC, but that I personally expect that to change this evening at the 2 a.m. update. And if that does change, we'll go ahead and get that on the page in the morning. Flint area around 7 p.m. I would say Flint should be on alert around 7 p.m. for the incoming storms. I'm not saying this is going to be, a major thing to rework your schedule around, but I do think that Flint would be in that area of interest, especially around 6 to 7 p.m. For you guys up there. I would expect at the very least some rain to be in the area as well as some wind. If we all tell it no, will it listen and go away? Hey, we can try. Yeah. So Caleb is just explaining here the QLCS is a quasi-linear convective system. It basically is a fancy term for a fast-moving line of storms. We call them squall lines. You'll hear refer to them as MCS, MCC. There's a lot of different terminologies for them, but the QLCS is the going term for this setup here. Yeah, also we're in the last part of that. I don't think a derecho has ever occurred in Michigan this late in the year. Derechos are fueled by heat, as well as upper level jet, what we call a ring of fire. Very unlikely that occurs in the fall. It's a very common summertime, late summer, especially July, August type of pattern. We'll see it in June sometimes, but it's more so July, August when we see the jet stream get in position for a derecho. Definitely not a fall thing. All right, I see a lot of people asking about their specific locations here. Again, if you're asking for your anywhere in Lower Peninsula, I see Gaylord, I see Lenawee County, I see Downriver, anywhere in the Lower Peninsula. So all those places, Gaylord, Lenawee County, Downriver, you guys are all in the area of interest. I do think the threat would be highest over toward, we'll go ahead and say Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids as the center points. However, the models do throw out instability across the entire state. The reason I think it's highest in the south and west part of the state is just because storms arrive over there during the peak heating, which is when instability would be at its highest. Now, as they move across the state, if they arrive 6 o'clock, for example, it'll be getting darker, sunset. Sun's not at the highest point in the sky. The instability of the fuel for the storms isn't greatest there. So I do think the threat will be highest in the south and west part of the state versus the east. But if we look on the model one more time here, we'll go ahead and bring this model back up here. For instability, it's going to be pretty much the same across the entire state. You see this? So all the areas in purple here, up in the tip of the mitten, I'm seeing 500 Cape. I'm seeing down here 600 along that front. So, excuse me. I think anywhere does have the threat. And if you are anywhere in the Lower Peninsula, you guys should be on alert for sure. Okay, so Joey asked if you should worry about these storms in southeast Michigan. A lot of people asked this last night about the football Friday evening, high school football playoffs. Yeah, I would especially say in the eastern part of the state, around 7 p.m. would be a good time for these storms to work their way through. Hopefully they're through by then, but I do think there is a chance. In fact, I think there's a higher chance that these storms are working their way out. We'll go ahead and say Detroit area, Lenawee County, Monroe, Wayne, Washington, up to the thumb. I do think the storms will be working through there around that time frame, if not just a bit before. So it might be pretty slippery. It might be pretty wet out there. But behind that would be rain and a little bit colder temperatures. So either way, it'll probably be a brutal Friday night. But yeah, there is a storm threat, especially in the eastern part of the state for the Friday evening high school playoff games. Yes, there is possible snow showers Monday and Tuesday. It's not going to accumulate, so do not freak out. Don't go buy shovels. Don't go get the ice melt. Don't do any of that. It's not going to accumulate. It's just going to be snow flurries, we'll call them. Nothing's going to stick. But yes, it is a possibility. And people are asking where all across the page, getting messages, how much snow we're going to get. No, it's not going to accumulate. Oh, no worries. Anywhere in Michigan could see snow flurries on Monday and Tuesday, but the potential for that is highest the further north you go. Yes, Drew, the reason for the overall threat for tornadoes being low is because the directional shear, if you pull a sounding, the forecast or the atmospheric X-ray, we see the wind pointing in one direction. We don't see any turning with those winds with height to get updrafts rotating. Now, that's not the only thing that goes into forecasting tornadoes, but for tornadoes, you really want to see instability a bit higher than 500 joules. There's a few other things that go into it, stuff like that, but that's the very basic answer is the lack of directional wind shear. So yes, Drew, you are correct. Directional shear is a change with wind with height, and speed shear is an increase of speed with height. There's two different, we say wind shear, but there's actually a lot of different breakdowns of wind shear. So it's not just wind shear is present. Well, what kind of wind shear? There's a lot that goes into forecasting these storms. What are we looking for at Greenville, Ionia area? I would say right around that 4 to 5 p.m. time frame would be on track for you guys. And I would just be concerned for a gusty wind threat along that cold front. There should be probably, I'm going to guess, a broken line or a line of storms along that cold front that could produce some pretty gusty winds. But yeah, that's what I would say for sure. And that goes for everybody. Could there be power outages? I'm not going to completely rule that out. I know a lot of places the ground is saturated. When the ground is saturated, uh, roots of the trees are weaker. We could topple trees on power lines, stuff like that. That could happen, although I don't see this being a major storm system that's going to knock power out widespread. I think isolated instances of power outages are possible, but overall, the chances of any person being affected are quite low, just given the widespread to scattered nature, or not widespread, the isolated to scattered nature of this system. And I believe I'm caught up on chat here. Any other questions, guys? Cold water, again, I'm not going to lock timing down 100%, but if there is enough consistency here that I do feel a little bit more confident giving time frames out. Cold water, I would say right around that 4 to 5 p.m. time frame. Yes, Alexis Hillsdale would be included in this risk. Your time frame would be right around the 5 to 6, I would say, and it's just going to be a wind threat. Nothing, nothing to get concerned or have too much anxiety over. It's not going to be a huge threat, a pretty low end risk, but it is October, and we do want to have people prepared for this. When will the rain be done for tomorrow? Well, we can look at a few things. Look at the NAM 3. Depends on where you're at. So go ahead and move this through tomorrow. It looks like it might rain all day, honestly. This is noon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Evening looks like it clears out, then more storms come in if you're in the central and northern parts of the state. So it might be off and on rain for the majority of us tomorrow. As far as rainfall goes, yeah, there could be a few flooding areas up there in northern Michigan, another inch or two of rain falling tomorrow. So I would say off and on rain for most of us tomorrow. If you're in the south, probably more dry areas than wet. But if you're in the central and northern parts of the state, it looks like it's gonna be a pretty wet day tomorrow. Yes, anywhere in the lower peninsula of Michigan would be in the area of interest. You're seeing the model here. Anywhere in green there has a good environment for some gusty winds there. Although I think the threat will be highest the further south and west you go. I'm not going to rule out an isolated storm that reaches severe limits elsewhere, and that goes for anywhere in the lower peninsula. So yeah, um, I see Newaygo County, I see Macomb County. Um, Time frame for Hastings, probably right around 5 o'clock, I'd say 5 to 6. Any other questions, guys? Been on here for about 32 minutes. So if you guys have questions, now is the time to ask them. And if nobody has questions, go ahead and, I don't know, hang out for a bit or hop off here. Do you think the rain and wind could cause the roads to be dangerous with the wind blowing all the peak foliage leaves onto the roadways? I am not an expert on that at all. Although it makes sense if there are a lot of leaves on the roadways, I would definitely stay slow down for sure. Um, it's a good point, Drew. So yeah, if you guys do happen to drive on roads covered in leaves Friday evening, just make sure you give yourself some extra time to stop and just make sure you have some traction before you can, you go your normal 55, 65 mile an hour. That's a good safety tip there. Autumn, that is a brilliant question. Now, I know a lot of you are pretty active on our page. Um, our staff right now is quite thin, not thin as in numbers, but we all got stuff going on in our personal lives. So we just because the threat overall isn't very high Friday, we may not be live. I know Joel's in college. I'll be training. I'm training for a job. I know Chandler's going through a loss in his family, and then Nick's at work until mid afternoon. So um, if anything goes severe Friday, we'll get a post on the page for sure. As far as going live, that's still up in the air. We just don't have any set plans right now, just given the fluidity of our staff and stuff like that. So, but we will have warnings and updates posted to the page. It's just I'm not sure about the live streams. The overall tornado threat Friday is quite low. I'm leaning against there being a threat for tornadoes. Not going to lock that 100%, but we'll go ahead and say 80%. There's not going to be a threat for tornadoes. Up to 60 miles per hour, Lindsay, would be the wind speeds for Friday. I'm not expecting anything crazy, 70, 80 plus. I'm not thinking that at all. I'm thinking more so along the lines of 50, 60 miles per hour. Now remember, the severe limits are 58 miles per hour or over. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Caleb, I would agree. I think the majority of, especially along that cold front, even in weaker showers and maybe some weaker thunderstorms, I would assume along that cold front, 35 to 50 miles per hour winds would be possible on more of a widespread basis. I think the lower end of like 40 mile per hour winds as that front passes would be possible. Then in areas that do have stronger updrafts, or should I say stronger downdrafts, I would see that being isolated up to 60. If thermodynamics are higher than expected, that could go to a scattered basis. But yeah, it's not going to be a widespread basis at all. Okay, Judy. So a recap here. We're about to hop off here, but go ahead and recap. So right now we are watching a system work its way through United States, it's going to swing a cold front through on Friday. Now, because we have warmer temperatures and some moisture to play with, that cold front could have some instability present, which could spark thunderstorms. And just given the amount of wind shear we have and the strength of the cold front, some of those storms could produce stronger wind gusts around the 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. time frame anywhere in Michigan. I think the threat is going to be highest off toward Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids area, just because the instability might be peaking the earlier the storms cross through the state. However, I think these models are right in the fact that the entire environment across the state is not going to say juiced or primed, but it does show a decent environment for some wind gusts to occur anywhere in Michigan. But I do think that threat will be highest the further south and the further west you go. There is no hail threat that I see. Maybe some small hail or crapple, maybe, just given some colder air aloft. But I don't see these updrafts being tall enough to support any type of significant severe hail. Tornado threat is quite low. Like I said before, 80%, I would say, leaning against there being any type of threat for tornadoes. But the wind shear is strong enough that I don't want to completely rule that out just yet. There's a few other things I want to see to, verify and guarantee that 100%. But yeah, that's the gist of this. Depends on how much instability we have in the mixed layer, and also if I do see there being a lightning threat for sure. I don't think it's going to be a very big lightning threat. Maybe a few strikes here and there along that line, but I don't see it being a huge thunderstorm threat. It'd probably just be. I don't want to say gusty rain showers because that really sounds pretty wimpy, especially for a storm that can be packing severe winds. But it doesn't always have to be thunder and lightning for there to be severe weather. So um, I do expect some lightning, but it's not going to be a summertime storm where it's going to be a ton of it. Weather Channel says no thunderstorms till 9 p.m. I would say a little bit earlier than that would be closer to 6, 7 p.m. The only way that this is a 9 p.m. arrival time on the eastern part of the state is if A, the models start to slow down a bit, or B, the storms aren't as quickly moving as they are expected to, which it could be pushed later. But right now, I think they're going to arrive in the west part of the state 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. They should be cleared the state by around 8 to 9 p.m. So I would expect them to be a little bit earlier than that in Macomb County. Yeah, if you are on the west part of the state, your chances of getting the Friday football in is probably higher. If you're in the eastern part of the state, I would say that that storm threat would be highest in the eastern part of the state around the 7 p.m. start time. How does Macomb County look for Friday? I missed this one. I apologize there, Mackenzie. Macomb County, I would just say some gusty winds are possible early evening. Nothing to be overly concerned about, but definitely pay attention and make sure you're indoors when these storms or rain showers move through because they could be packing quite a punch with some higher wind gusts being possible. That would be the prime time there, 96 and 23. That'd be the prime time for the storms be moving through there, Brittany. So um, just prepare yourself or your kiddos there. Um, it's a regional cross country, so there'll probably be a lot of schools there, I would assume. So yeah, that's not a good situation there. I don't think it's going to be a significant event. I do think that it could disrupt events like this for sure for a short period of time, but it'll be pretty quick moving. Where if you just hunker down for a bit, it'll be past you in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would say right around that time frame, late afternoon, early evening on the 96-23 areas, definitely be on alert there. All right, guys. About here 40 minutes, and I think I'm about to hop off here. I don't see more questions roll in. Um, we might go live one more time tomorrow night. Not quite sure yet. I know my schedule is leaning towards um, being a little bit busier, but at the very least, I'll probably make a pre-made video and get it posted on Facebook for you guys to watch. in case I don't get to go live. But overall, we'll have updates posted to the page. We'll have anything from the SPC posted. We'll have updates. We'll keep you guys in the loop. Either way, we'll be there. So, with that being said, look at chat one more time. Yeah, you're not going to see your weather apps talk about severe weather just yet. Even the SPC doesn't have a risk out, but we're going to be the first ones to tell you because we look at data as it comes in every 6 hours. We don't make forecasts every 12 hours like the SPC does, in some cases 24 hours. So we're updating constantly. But honestly, we've been keying in on the system for over a week now. So um, I do expect there to be a low end, at the very least, a low end severe risk somewhere in Michigan on Friday. All right, guys, hit that like button on your way out. I would appreciate that. And again, I'll have updates for you on the page throughout the day tomorrow. If anything changes, we'll let you guys know. So thanks for watching and stay safe.